Well, hey friends, welcome to Cinematic Scripture, where I help spiritually curious Christians watch attentively, reflect spiritually, and lead from story. Everything is connected. A whisper from a sci-fi epic, but also the heartbeat of every great story. Because when Jesus tells 3 parables in a row, he's not repeating himself. He's revealing something deeper. Trilogy isn't excess. It's escalation and its structure. And it moves us from wandering to wonder. What if Jesus didn't just teach? What if he built a narrative arc to reveal the very rhythm of heaven? This is Cinematic Scripture, where faith and film get a seat at the same table. I'm your host, Kyle Harless. Let's roll film. All right, so today we are stepping back into Luke 15, not to retell the story of the prodigal, but to explore the trilogy of parables that Jesus tells. What happens when Jesus stacks story upon story upon story, loss upon loss, and celebration upon resistance? Now, we've looked at the younger brother in his journey home. We've turned and we've faced the older brother in the mirror. But here's the question. Why did Jesus tell 3 stories instead of just one? Luke 15 isn't a random list of parables. It's actually a trilogy, one with structure, rhythm, setup, escalation, and a beautiful payoff. Think Lord of the Rings or The Dark Knight. Each chapter deepens the drama and it reveals something bigger than itself. So today we're going to ask, what's Jesus building towards? And what does this story structure tell us about heaven itself? All right, so let's jump into the narrative structure of Luke 15. So if you remember, the chapter opens with the religious crowd and the sinners, both with Jesus, and the religious people are grumbling that Jesus is associating and eating and drinking with sinners, prostitutes, tax collectors, the scum of the earth, the worst of the worst, if you will. So this chapter actually opens with lostness and judgment in the air. And what does Jesus do? He responds by telling a story, then another story, and then another story. But there's a disruption in these stories. See, each parable actually begins with absence. There's a missing sheep, a misplaced coin, a son who walks away. But there's action that's taken. In the first 2 parables, Jesus says that someone actually searches. A shepherd looks for the sheep, a woman looks for the coin. But in the third story, no one goes after the lost son. Not until the father runs to welcome him home. There's also opposition in this chapter in these parables. The first 2 stories end in celebration, but the third introduces resistance. Someone refuses to rejoice that what was lost is found, and it's a brother who chooses to stay outside. And so here's the opposition. Restoration is no longer just about finding, it's now about responding. And then we're ultimately introduced to a new world. The story crescendos with joy in heaven, but an unanswered question on earth. Will we join the celebration or will we stand apart from it? Now, like any good trilogy, there's narrative techniques all throughout this that just structure escalation, emotion, and truth. Let's look at some of these. So check out the escalation in this trilogy, all right? So there's this escalation by value. We have 1 in 100 in the sheep. We have 1 in 10 with the coin. And then we have 1 in 2 with the son. We also have an escalation by relationship. You could argue that with the sheep, it's ownership. With the woman, it's an intimate possession. I mean, it's 1 in 10 and she searches the house for it. And then in 1 and 2 with the son, it's deep covenant. So we go from ownership to possession to covenant, this escalation in relationship. There's an escalation in involvement as well. The shepherd acts, he leaves. The woman, she searches, she upends her house trying to find it. Where the father, he waits and watches. See, I think there's this thematic thread that flows through all 3 of these parables. And you could say it's heaven doesn't measure worth by productivity, but it celebrates recovery. Each parable ends with joy, because what was lost was found. And we see this escalate 1 in 100, 1 in 10, 1 in 2. Heaven celebrates. Each parable ends with a celebration of joy because what was lost was found. And that actually leads us into the theme of Luke 15. All right, so Luke 15. I love the layers in this chapter. All right. When you put the three parables together, what we see is this theme that what heaven celebrates, disciples should pursue. See, Luke 15 tells a three-part story to reveal one truth. The heartbeat of heaven is joy over redemption. I'm going to say it again. The heartbeat of heaven is joy over redemption. I mean, think about Jesus in Luke chapter 19, verse 10, where he says, the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. See, each parable in Luke 15 builds like a rising score. Something is lost, but then something is found. And heaven erupts in celebration. So if there's like a controlling idea to this theme, if you were to state the theme as a controlling idea, it would be this: what heaven celebrates, disciples should pursue. Because Jesus shows that when the shepherd finds the sheep, there's celebration. When the woman finds the coin, there's celebration. And when the son comes home, there is celebration. Now let's look at the framework, our 3-question framework, as we move through this chapter. All right, biblical framework are 3 questions: realm, theme, what's being communicated. First, the realm. The realm of this is kingdom. This is the kingdom Jesus came to proclaim, where the lost are not liabilities, but they're beloved. The highest joy isn't found in perfection or status, but in rescue and return. All right. This is the kingdom of heaven, one that celebrates when the lost are found. Jesus came to seek and to save to lost. God, since Genesis, has been pursuing humankind, to restore him to himself. And this is a picture of that. This realm is the kingdom. As the lost, when it's returned, when it's found, there's celebration in heaven. So then the theme: the joy of heaven isn't triggered by achievement. It's stirred by redemption. Whether it's 1 in 100 or 1 in 10 or 1 in 2, when what is lost is found, there's celebration. These parables reveal that God's mission is not about celebrating the righteous. It's about pursuing the wandering. All right. It's not about celebrating the righteous. It's about pursuing the wandering. So what does this communicate? Is it truth or lies? Well, when you look, it's scripture, so I would say it's truth, but think of it this way, like the story aspect of it, okay? These parables, it's communicating truth because these parables are kingdom coded, all right? Jesus is redefining, he's revealing what matters most. And it not just to heaven, but what should matter most to us. The religious crowd is like furious. They're judging him. They're judging the sinners. How dare this man eat with sinners and tax collectors and prostitutes? And so Jesus tells them not 1, not 2, but 3 stories to show, look, heaven pursues what is lost. Heaven looks for what is lost. This is the kingdom. This is what matters most, is finding what is lost. So those are the 3 questions, all right? Luke 15 is this beautiful image of this trilogy that reveals over and over and over again that the heartbeat of heaven is to rejoice when the lost are found. See, when you read Luke 15, not in I've read this, I know these stories, or when you don't read it as theology, which, let's face it, Luke 15 is brilliant theology, but when you allow yourself to read it as a story and be pulled into the wonder of the scene and what is happening, you see that Luke 15 is brilliant storytelling. Jesus doesn't give a sermon to say, hey, don't judge the sinner. Let me tell you, he doesn't give the sermon. He creates a trilogy, okay? Every parable builds towards a single jolting reality that heaven celebrates when lost things are found. And I think it begs the question, do we? Do we celebrate when lost things are found? Are we more bothered by what wandered off? Or are we filled with joy when it's returned? As in, are we like, oh, they just left, or oh, they're a sinner, or whatever? Or does that bother us? Are we more filled with joy when they return? Do we celebrate when the lost are found, when they come home? It asks another question. Does our discipleship prioritize the lost, or does it simply preserve the found? If our discipleship is all about filling believers with more Bible knowledge in small groups and classes, our discipleship is not discipleship. Discipleship and evangelism go hand in hand. Discipleship should be about prioritizing the lost. Maybe another question we should think about, and one that probably haunts us even more, is if we were there in that crowd standing next to Jesus, how many parables would it take for us to understand the point? Would we get, oh, heaven celebrates that lost things are found after hearing about the sheep and the shepherd? Or would it take two stories? Oh, after hearing about the woman and the coin, oh man, maybe this is a reference that we should celebrate when lost things are found. Or does it take three parables? Or maybe after the third parable, like the older brother standing in the field that doesn't respond, that's us because we just don't get it. How many parables would it take for us to understand the point Jesus is trying to make here? So the whole point of this is that lost things matter. And when they're found, heaven throws a party. I'm going to say it again. This is so important. This is so crucial to Luke 15. Lost things matter. And when they're found, heaven throws a party. Jesus tells 3 stories to help us understand that point. Lost things matter. And when they're found, heaven throws a party. So hey, if this episode has helped you see the beauty in the structure or the urgency in the search, if it's helped you realize that, man, Jesus is a master storyteller and he builds this beautiful trilogy, can I just consider leaving a review or a like? It helps other people find the show. Until next time, I'm Kyle, and this is Cinematic Scripture. Watch attentively, reflect spiritually, lead from story. Because discipleship lives in what we pay attention to, and in the narrative we choose to enter. I'll see you next time.